the governance of the ministry.
I fully agree with you, Honourable Chair, but there has to be a creation of awareness on your part. That becomes the trigger mechanism to allow you to delve into the matter, to account for the operations of the police force. And it's not the first type of a fund that we administer through the police. They do have certain funds which they administer, and these are accounted through the ministry. Yes, they have their own accounting arrangement as a police force, but they account to treasury through the ministry. In terms of this one, it's one of those funds which even to treasury were not declared to treasury because there was no awareness on our part so that we could carry out our supervisory role to ensure that the accounting part and also the administration part. For example, you know, the appointment of boards, etc., the ministry has to be involved, and the minister should actually approve before finalization. And this did not take place because, as far as I know and as far as I'm aware, the minister was not involved unless he was privy to it. But as far as I know, he was not involved, and he did not. If he was involved, he did not create awareness. On my part, as accounting officer of the ministry, because by the end of the day, I am responsible and I account to Parliament in terms of the financial stewardship and administration of those funds. Thank you.
I think your position is clear too. I'm glad that the Acting Commissioner General of Police is here. I'm sure you're taking note of that. You will operate without reporting to the Permanent Secretary on your operations which you have received in the name of government, in the name of the police through government. Dr. Chombo, you are here. This would not certainly pass you as former Minister of Home Affairs. When you were there, what would you tell us about this concession given to the police? Handover, takeover, was it done? Were you briefed about it as the responsible minister?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and all the members of your esteemed committee. I was Minister of Home Affairs for a brief period, and during that period, I was not briefed about this mining issue. I only heard it last time when you talked about it. Thank you.
In terms of the role of the Minister of Home Affairs, I want you to help us in terms of the reporting structure, because the Permanent Secretary clearly says that as the Chief Accounting Officer, I talk to the Minister in terms of a lot of issues, even recommendation on boards. The Minister approves. In a situation like this where the police is given a concession on mining and it's in the police name, in a normal situation, is it not something that you are supposed to know about?
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I think ordinarily the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Home Affairs, in which ZRP falls, would have a liaison with the Permanent Secretaries in the Ministry of Mines and in the Ministry of Finance. I think that is what he was explaining, that then if that happens, then he's in the know. That would then have contributed to his agenda to brief the minister on a weekly basis or on a need basis. And as he has said, he was unaware, and in turn I was also unaware. Thank you.
I hope the Minister of Finance is here, because we now getting to the point where government institutions have these concessions. They are supposed to account, and it's the Minister of Finance that accounts. He is the representative from the Minister of Finance here. Mr. Mliswa, we permanent secretaries for the Minister of Mines. Mr. Munodawafa, you were here. How do you, the concessions, we give you the concessions, do you give them the name of the ministry, or you're told which name to give? Is it the same as an offer letter where it's putting your name, or the 1980 list? Can you enlighten the committee? How do you reword it? Is it to Dr. Chombo, Minister of Home Affairs, for example, or Mr. Machia, Permanent Secretary, or Commissioner General X, and here you are, this is what your ministry has got. How do you give these concessions? In whose name? Mr. Munodawafa, you must take oath first. I know you're not there at the time, but the thing with all the permanent secretary never changes.
I haven't taken off. I won't say anything. I swear that the evidence I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth, so help me God. Honorable Chair, I think to respond to your question, and I respond to it as a general question, and if there are specifics, perhaps colleagues will also then come in. The Ministry of Mines and Mining Development will issue a special grant to an applicant, and the applicant would have a name. The applicant would either be a company, or it can be an individual, or it can be a syndicate. But regardless of where the applicant is coming from, the communication will go back to the applicant, not necessarily to the ministry, unless the ministry were the applicant. Thank
you. In this case, the concessions, the special grants that were given to Minister of Defense, Minister of State Security, Minister of Home Affairs, were applied using which name, and the grants in which name? May I ask this question to Mr. Mliswa? I'm sure you were the Permanent Secretary at the time.
Thank you, Chair. I was not the Permanent Secretary at the time, because when I arrived, the grants had already been issued. But they were issued in the names of the various companies which have already been mentioned.
Okay, so they were issued in the various companies. ZMDC, ZMDC here?
Yes.
Yes, can you respond to that? We've got to have some clarity here. I'm following, special grant is given, you do the mining, and is the grant in your name, special grant, or it's in the company nominated, and then you get together and then you create a new vehicle? Can you enlighten us on that?
I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth. So help me God.
Okay, so you've taken oath. I had not seen Mr. Masimane because of the cameras in front of me. I'm not able to, but there's no better man than you to address this. It was all under your chairmanship. Help us, the grants, special grants, how do we come through, how do we set up a joint venture partnership and so forth?
The applicant initially would be the investor. But when it came to the granting of the special grant, it will be the special purpose vehicle formed by the investor and ZMDC, so that the licensing is in the name of the company which will actually operate. So in the situation of the police, for example, the police would be shareholders, but the special grant would not be in their name. But the expectation would be that on their part at the police force, which is an internal arrangement, they would then fulfill their own obligations in terms of informing their ministry that we have this concession, and then the accounting is handled in their ministry. But that would really be their own arrangement.
Yeah, I think that's what I thought. I think that's what I thought, that the ministry would then have its own internal due process that they follow and say, yes, with the joint venture, if they're going to create a special purpose vehicle with certain directors, they inform you as ZMDC since they are going into this joint partnership with you together. But that seems to be missing in terms of the security sector. And the police in particular, in that the permanent secretary is not even aware, because there's no way the police would get this in the name of ZRP, which is certainly an arm of the Ministry of Home Affairs. And all this happens, and it does not get to the permanent secretary. And so I'm glad that the acting Commissioner General of Police is here. He has to respond to this, as you can follow. Deputy Commissioner General Matibiri on where all this, certainly the permanent secretary totally exonerates himself from knowing about this. The minister also does. So when you are given concessions, when you're given this concession in the name of the police, what arrangements did you then have? Because the fiscus, you're not contributing, the Secretary of Finance, as Mr. Machia says, is supposed to know because of the relationship that the thing has. I think before you respond, though, let me say this to the permanent secretary. It is quite unfortunate that these things are read in public, that the police have been given a concession. Central Intelligence Organization has been given a concession, the Ministry of Defense has been given a concession, but you still play a blind ear to all this. Where no one checks what is going on, and it's about passing the buck on to the other. I don't know. All the permanent sectors, no one ever wanted to know what the police are doing. Were they that untouchable? DCG Matibiri, were you that untouchable that your bosses can't even ask you?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Just before Mr. Matibiri comes to respond, Mr. Chairman, if you can allow me, Mr. Chairman, if the PEMSEC can come in, just to clear the air as to what really caused the PEMSEC not to find out from the police as to what really was happening. Bearing in mind that this has been in the public domain, civic society has been talking about this. Even members of parliament, the police were mining diamonds in Chatham. But the PEMSEC never bothered to just check what was happening. What influenced that thinking? Why did he take that stance?
It's a very important question. Very important. It must be answered by the permanent secretaries of
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I'll begin from the general practice viewpoint. There are donations that can be made to the police force. There are monies that they can have, but in terms of standing instructions, they need to declare that even to get a laptop, a cell phone, a desk, they'll declare to the ministry, to the accounting officer, and in turn I would then apprise Treasury the fact that we have received 1, 2, 3 items, and the Treasury to grant authority. So in this instant, that concession or tribution granted to police, one would hope it was in writing. And also the percentages that have been touted here, 5%, 10%, 20%, we didn't know anything about those particular issues. The trigger mechanism is that they will declare to the ministry. Then in turn, we would now say, right, in terms of Public Financial Management Act, this is the way we are supposed to proceed. In terms of rumors, what people talk, basically you cannot administer on that particular basis. Otherwise, it creates a certain aspersion between the ministry and the department under that particular ministry. Thank you.
Maybe this must be directed to the basic of mines and basic mines and mineral development. When the former president talked about the issue of the 15 billion which went missing, this was definitely in relation to those concessions which were under your control. When you did your investigations or your research to authenticate the statement by the former president, did you ever also thought of investigating or researching all the concessions which were given to the police, to the CIO, so that at least you can rely on that statement which the former president had said on the missing of 15 billion?
I mean, that's a very important question. That the whole country know that the former president spoke about the 15 billion. But no one did anything about it. The Minister of Mines didn't go looking where is it so that they report back to the principal, and everybody was quiet. The Minister of Mines was supposed to be responsible for ensuring through the MDC to account for all the revenue which was being generated from your point of view. Because what did you do? Because you were in the diamond sector and government was the biggest player in that. And we go back to the permanent secretaries from the Ministry of Mines and Mining Development. May you respond? Sometimes do our best.
Chairman, with all due respect, when the statement was made, I was not with the information. So there was no way I could have followed up on that.
Okay. Professor Gudyanga.
Thank you, Chairman, for the question. It is a very good question. When the question of 15 billion was mentioned, the Ministry of Mines and the Ministry of Home Affairs, we have always had a cooperation that goes back many years to look into the leakages of minerals, not just mineral diamonds. And it's something that investigation has been ongoing. If I may say so, Mr. Chairman, when it comes to diamonds, there are syndicates that are very sophisticated in the country and outside the country. And many people get involved. Many beneficiaries get involved to ensure that the truth never comes out. I think it's open secret that my name personally has been vilified in the media, and I take it that it was part of a strategy to mask what otherwise would have been unearthed. But the Ministry of Home Affairs and Ministry of Mines, we have been working with several strategies that we were putting in place, and it was ongoing until I left the ministry. Thank you.
Thank you. If us from mine will continue our activity. Now is the opportunity for you to unmask what was going to be it. Tell us what it is. Is that the same?
Mr. Chairman, I am no longer a permanent secretary. I left. I was retired end of January. And since then I've been arrested 3 times. And I don't want to say anything that could prejudice the outcome of trials that are coming up. I don't have legal protection, and therefore it's very risky. I've appeared before this committee before, and some of the things that have transpired in this committee were selectively used in other courts processes at my prejudice with no protection of this committee. So I'm really reluctant to disclose all that I know during the time that I was permanent secretary. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the procedures are also well known, that information given to this committee cannot be used to incriminate anyone. It is our recommendations after, which are critical. We must understand that, and we must make it, that is the position in terms of the law. When we are here, you are protected by that information, the privileges, immunities, which is very clear. But equally, there are activities, events that happened in your tenure as a permanent secretary, which I think, and will not force you to say it, because it then gives a clearer picture where there is no speculation. Whilst this committee has met you for several times, we are yet to come up with final recommendations. And I think our recommendations are what is critical, and I want to make everybody understand the way Parliament operates. That is the simple reason why I stopped Honorable Matamanazo from preempting, because that's a session that we have in terms of a way forward. So our recommendations are what are critical, and those recommendations are the ones that can then be used because of the evidence that will be covered by whichever institution. But before that, they can't. So I think that must be understood, and I must make this clear to everyone from a constitutional point of view, because it then seems as if Parliament is there to, we do an inquiry, and after an inquiry, there are recommendations. As much as our Obert is originating recommendations today, asking the permanent secretaries that with these recommendations, what did you do? So when we make recommendations, we equally ask, and the originating recommendations are critical, because we're in Parliament of records. We're not a parliament, so we go back. Most of the issues, if you go through the Chinga report, they were addressed, but they were never implemented. So what then made the permanent secretaries and the ministers not implement the recommendations? So I think this just gives an understanding on how the committee operates. No wonder why we say that you are protected by the privileges and immunities of Parliament. And if anything happens to you, you report it back to Parliament. But if you don't report it back to Parliament, you then cannot accuse Parliament of not protecting you. We can only protect you when you've told us that the information that I gave is not being used against me. But that's not to say that the police can't also do their work. I think we need to understand that. We're also not an institution that must protect what the police and other institutions must do. So it is important in that regard that if you're not comfortable with the information, that is okay. We also move on. And yes, the issue of your matters in court, we really don't want to discuss. But some of the issues that we discussed with you at the time were to do with Chrome and many other situations in terms of governance. At the end of the day, where MMCZ was directed to pay money to Pedstock. This is on record, Pedstock, which is not a mining company, to gain personal gain in terms of irrigation equipment, which has nothing to do with mining. So let me also be very clear in that certainly was discussed in this committee in terms of the committee wanted to understand why MMCZ was giving money and who was giving those directives. And the ministers have the right to also get money from MMCZ. The permanent secretaries have the right to say MMCZ, pay for my wife's medical bill, pay for my son to go and fly. So that to me is also some of the issues in our role of oversight. MMCZ is here. They'll also be responding to how some of the money left them on whose instruction. So I think I wanted to just clear that so that there's an understanding, not to say when we go to Parliament we are arrested. If there are other issues that happen that warrant that, no, we're very clear on that. And please, if there are any issues that happen which involve Parliament in terms of what you've done, I think it's important you report to Parliament. Yes, Mr. Munodawafa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I wanted to respond to the Ministry's response to that public statement. I'm aware that the Ministry then set up engaged the Auditor General's office and requested for a forensic audit of the sector. And to the best of my knowledge, and I know this because I remember we had at least one meeting with the Auditor General and the companies that were doing the forensic audit. There is some work that has been happening, but my understanding of the challenge they faced is that I think when the process started in earnest, the companies, certainly some of them had closed. So I think much as you had challenges in locating some of the players, they also had challenges in locating some of the documents. But it's a process which they have not officially said they have finished. And when the forensic auditors are doing their work, you want to leave them to work. So there is a forensic audit that is what's going on that issue. Thank you.
But you're aware, Permanent Secretaries for Mines, that forensic audit and the aspect for the audit to happen was well recommended even in the Chinga report. Are you also aware of that? Professor Gudyanga, are you aware that this committee through the late Chinga did recommend for an audit?
Yes, we are aware. That's why we, as ministry, set up, engaged the Auditor General to get auditors, external auditors, to do that forensic audit. So we are aware and we acted on it. As my colleague has explained, it hasn't been closed chapter yet.
Mr. Munodawafa, when do you think this audit will be complete? Because on the other hand, you're saying these companies have closed down, but the government is not closed down. This is a joint venture, but it's with government.
Mr. Chairman, I'm under oath. I wouldn't want to speculate. I think the Auditor General's office would be better placed to answer the question.
I think we shall invite the Auditor General office. I think it's important so that we understand how far the audit has gone in terms of the mining operations. Commissioner General, acting, you are here. Commissioner General, there is a lot in terms of the police. I think your partners in the joint venture spoke about how one was taken in a dark room and police officers were sent, and he wrote a letter to that effect. There's also the aspect of the government takeover, the police takeover of these mining concessions. And there is DTZ, which is here, which spoke about the deployment of 80 police officers armed with AK rifles. Mbada Diamonds again mentioned that 200 officers again armed. We were also deployed to Marangi. If I'm not mistaken, Dr. Chombo at the time was Minister of Home Affairs, and his evidence before us was that I don't deploy the police, it's the Commissioner General. But of course, he had told us that that had come through the Minister of Mines to ensure that the police also assist. In terms of deployment, he was not involved. The Commissioner General is the one who was responsible for those deployments. Can you respond to the joint venture which the government did not know about and which your ministry did not know about? And is that how you conduct business, that you don't report to the ministry pertaining to activities that would have been empowered you through the government, and in this particular instance, the Ministry of Mines?
Thank you very much, Chairman. I wish to state that I am here wearing two hats. One for myself and the other for the Commissioner General, who has been excused. As for myself, I was summoned to this Honorable Parliament to give testimony on Chinyama. And I wish to state that I know absolutely nothing about this company. I am here also with my colleagues, Deputy Commissioner General Swanda and Deputy Commissioner Shambari. And the Commissioner General himself indicated to me when we saw the summons that he knew absolutely nothing about Chinyama. The same goes with my colleagues here. They can confirm what I'm saying. What I'm saying, possibly there is nothing amiss with that. We are an organization of 50,000 people. Assignments are delegated to each and every one of us, and nothing of that sort was assigned to any one of us. So we know nothing. The reasons for failing to know are many. Mr. Mnyeza indicated that this company was stopped at its formative stage, which means they have not done anything. And therefore, it was not important that all of us get to know about what was happening there. The other reason was that there was nothing coming in terms of revenue, which warranted ourselves knowing. It's possibly something that never really warranted the attention. In my personal capacity, I may be helpful to your committee with regards to the initial deployment of security forces to Chiadzwa around 2005-2006. That's where I can make meaningful contribution to your committee.
What then happened later, years later, I am not privy, because the instructions given to us when we deployed security personnel in Chiazwa had ended. We were given instructions, and there were only 3 objectives to deal with. That is, 1, to go and ensure that there is law and order in Chiazwa, because around that time there were about 35,000 panas. There were people coming from all over the continent, and not only from Africa, but even from the Middle East and other continents. And it became a security risk, and we were deployed to, 1, maintain law and order, 2, create a conducive environment for investment, and to ensure that everything that happens there satisfy the requirements of government. We are happy that we did that. We achieved all that. The whole idea was to ensure that private companies come in and invest, while we provide security, perimeter security, outside security. So once that was achieved, the security forces scaled down, and it was the Ministry of Mines and Ministry of Finance who remained active there. This is not to say we completely pulled out of Chiazwa. We remained there for reasons. As to the allegations that have been raised, I am happy that we have retired officers and serving officers who are still with us, who possibly may be competent to answer to all the accusations that have been made. I wish to say we are not, as you indicated, that we could be possibly untouchable. Every other day we are brought before the courts, an indication that people do take us to the courts of law. I wish to indicate that over lunch we had a discussion over the issues raised by Mr. Mliswa in particular, and there is one officer who told me this afternoon that he is the secretary of the company called Jinyame, and he is prepared to testify. With your indulgence, Chair, I ask that all those questions be directed to him. Thank you. He is Mr. Maozwa. He is a serving member.
Okay, so you're a serving member who's the company secretary. Okay, we'll get to that. I think the deployment of the police, now we're being told no one knew about it. If I'm not mistaken, the director, Deputy Commissioner Director Operations. At the time, if that has not changed, that's an operational issue. So you are telling me that the entire police command is not aware of police deployed to Marange 200, which were under, we have the name of the superintendent who was heading them, and also in GTZ mine, they also have the name of the police officers.
That's not what I said, I said I know more about the deployments that took place when there were more than 35,000 panels there. And these deployments consisted of the police, the army, and other security services. But once our objectives were attained, we scaled down. And it is that remaining contingent of officers that keeps in touch with the developments in the Chiazwa area.
You see, Dr. Chombo, do you recall us bringing this question up to you as Minister of Home Affairs, and you did admit that yes, the police were involved, but you are not responsible, and your colleague Minister of Mines, Honorable Chidhakwa, had sought assistance so that there could be the police intervention coming in. You do recall that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wish to say that the police and the Ministry of Mines have always worked together in dealing with issues that were difficult. And the same thing in this particular case is, I think, one of the permanent secretaries was talking. The police provide the service, and the Ministry of Mines, I would say, were the client that requested particular services from the police. And that is all I really can say. In terms of how they are going to act, as I said the last time, Section 221 of the Zimbabwe Constitution clearly states that it is the police commissioner, the Commissioner General of Police of the Zimbabwe Republic Police, who is in charge, and not the minister. And also the Police Act on Chapter 11 also clearly states who is the boss, and it is the Commissioner of Police who is the boss, who deploys numbers depending on how he assesses the situation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Chidhakwa, pretty clear in your evidence, you did allude to the fact that they were illegal. The activities were illegal because the license had expired. What measures did you take to regularize that so that there's ZCDC right now?
Thank you, Chairman. Before I do that, I just want to make a distinction, I think, just so that we are clear. There was the first deployment, which is around the 2005 time. And then there is the second deployment, which comes at a time in 2016 when the licenses of the companies expired. And I will now answer the question. When we discovered that the licenses had expired, we communicated, as I said, the messages to the companies, and it took us. We discovered that, I think, about November of 2015, and in 2016, in March, we had then completed the processes that needed to be done, and we then wrote to the companies, advising them that their licenses had expired and that we were requesting them to cease all operations very much along the lines of what is in the Mines and Minerals Act. It says when a license expires, a company is required to cease all operations, and it is expected to wind up its business within 90 days. 90 days of the letter being delivered to them. So we sent the letters to the companies, and as we do in all situations, when there is a dispute in a gold mine or in a whatever it is, in a chrome mine, we as Ministry of Mines, from a security point of view, we can't deal with the issues. We would then go to the Ministry of Home Affairs and say to them, we have a dispute or we have a gold rush on farm number this. We are asking that the police be requested to take care of things. So in this case, we then also requested the Ministry of Home Affairs to send police officers to go to Barang. So basically, that's where it happened. As we were doing that, naturally, the companies were also going to the courts of law, and we then started the process of court procedures.
Oh, Mr. General, there we go. It's confirmed that the police was deployed, as you heard, and in a very procedural well, as far as is concerned, as the police are on behalf, so that there's law and order spoke to the Minister of Home Affairs, who then gave this to the Commissioner General, and the police were deployed. Because I think, Commissioner General, this is a big issue which has attracted international attention in the police being in a place that they're not supposed to be, and the police still not doing anything about it. Commissioner General Matanga was here before us, clearly saying, I did not know about it, now I am going to investigate. Members, is that not true? And now I'm going to investigate, and I'll come back with a detailed report. And today I thought it would be the detailed report that will be presented before us, saying, yes, this was happened, it had nothing to do with us, because surely an issue like this, which requires the attention of the Commissioner General and a commitment from the Commissioner General that it is investigated, is still not investigated. So there were these fake police officers with AKs. If that's the case, then we are actually unsafe in this country. Because we now don't know who's the police and who's not, because anybody can be deployed, and we can't take this lightly, sir. It is important that we know that when the police are wearing a uniform and they've got AK rifles, are they our police or there is a war?
Honorable Chair, I think you need to take note that at no point are we disputing the deployment of police officers. They were deployed from the very initial stages. They possibly could still be there. With regards to the report by the Commissioner General, he had indicated that if he is done with the President in time, he would in person come and brief. But unfortunately, he does not maintain the diary of the President. And whether he is going to come later or not, I am not privileged to know. But I want to accept that there was a deployment of police officers. They were there, and at one time I was in charge of those deployments. But what happened later after we attained our objectives, I happen not to know, because we had accomplished our assignment.
No, I think, Commissioner General, let's talk about these police officers deployed at this time, not the ones when there was, I think let's be specific. With the things specifically required in terms of the police deployment are those which were done recently when the mining licenses, as the Minister said, had expired, and he then went to the police to say, can you assist us? Go and put law and order after you after you had already restored law and order in terms of the 35,000. So we're not talking about the 35,000. We're talking about these officers who were deployed. And then the next question would be, if they were deployed, to do what? Yes, Honorable Supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just my supplementary to Mr. Matibiri is to do with the deployment. On the last part, when we had vaults of diamonds which were taken, on the last part, it's alleged that when the deployment was done, it had nothing to do with the probe for Manikale province. Was not even aware. And more so, just to add to that, so that probably I'll furnish you with the details, so that maybe you'll have the leniency to disclose details. It's being said that when the deployment was done, it was done from Harare, PGHQ. And the responsibility was given to recruits to go and take care of that task. Why? Because they had to circumvent this issue of allowances and this issue of directives, and these guys, they're still on training. So they will do things wish-wash. And only one person was in charge. Can you give details? It's unfortunate I'm saying this to the nation, but these are facts. Whoever comes to me, but these are facts.
I think it's also important that the Minister did indicate that the DTZ license had not expired. So there must also be an answer why troops or police officers were also deployed to a mine whose license had not expired.
And there were courts.
So to me, let me take this opportunity. Is the officer in charge for that station, we had asked him to be here, the officer in charge for that station in Marange present here, so that we can hear from him, because the police work on a rank and file in terms of, and we escalate it to the top. So let's ask the officer in charge if he knew of any deployments. then we take it to the officer commanding of the district, we take it to the officer commanding of the province, then the Commissioner General who's responsible for deployments can then really tell us. And if there's officer commanding for Memorials Depot here, we also want to know if there were any trainees deployed to those areas. I'm sure in our last meeting with the Commissioner General, we asked of these people to be here. Are they here, Commissioner General?
I take note that there are so many.
First of all, we had asked for the officer in charge of the police station that these resources are. Is the officer in charge here? Will you take all? Thank you very much. In fact, if you can move to the front, please, and occupy. Can you move to? There's an empty seat right there.
I feel that the evidence that I give is the truth, nothing else but the truth. So help me God.
I was just thinking that, you know, it is a dream of any police officer to sit next to the former Minister of Home Affairs. It's only in the Parliament of Zimbabwe that you can enjoy these benefits. Equally, next to the Minister of Home Affairs, there's a former Minister of Defense and State Security. So you feel very comfortable and powerful in that seat. Just going back to business. What is your name?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Inspector Francis Gudyanga, and I'm the officer in charge Marange Police Station.
You're officer in charge. You've been there from what stage? Were you also officer in charge during the takeover by the CDC?
That's correct. I went there towards the end of 2015, Mr. Chair.
As officer in charge, are you aware of any police officers who were deployed to Marange?
That's very true. I'm aware of the deployments that were at Chidhakwa during the takeover of the mines by the Minister of Mines.
Okay. Were you made aware through some communication through your ways of communicating, your radios, your CC coming through? What mode of communication came to you about this officer in charge of here?
I got a word from my district commanders that there will be some deployments were coming on the ground for the purposes of taking over the operations of the mines from the then mines that were operating down there.
I like that, the taking over. You got a report from your superior that there's a deployment coming in for the taking over of the mines. That is good enough. Also commanding for the district is here. The district also commanding. This is also in charge. He got this from the district district officer commanding, is the district officer commanding here, Commissioner General Masipiri?
Yes, Honorable.
Will you take over? Thank you. We have the officer commanding for the provinces here, the problem. Is the problem here? Acting Commissioner General is the officer commanding for Manikangi at the time here. And also the officer commanding for Morris Depot.
Chair, I happen not to know who you invited and who you didn't invite. I know about my personal invitation.
You see, this is where you see the officer in charge is here, because when we met with Commissioner General, we asked for the officer in charge of the area concerned to be here. He is here to show you that we're very effective in our communication. We also asked for the district officer commanding, who is here. We also asked for the provincial officer commanding, who is not here. We also asked for the commanding officer commanding of Morris Depot. So how can we ask these two to be here and yet their superiors are not here? We understood that you work from an operational point of view, it is rank and file. So we now seem not to, but anyway, we'll continue, because the officer commanding for the province was supposed to be here to also tell us in terms of the deployment. May you take off and then we proceed.
I swear that the evidence that I will give is the truth, nothing else but the truth. So help me God.
Okay, may you give us your full names, please?
I'm Chief Superintendent Mishek Kachpano Chingoja.
May you tell us your role at the time of the deployment of the troops?
I vividly recall that I was the officer commanding Mutare Rural then, but will say I really did not know anything about this deployment that you're talking about till the troops were on the ground.
The officer in charge said that he got the instructions from you to say that the troops coming as the officer commanding, and what would you be your comment on this?
Yeah, it could have been the office and not the person.
Let us understand. What we are trying to establish here is an inquiry into the deployment of the troops. We are starting with the officer in charge, who is under oath and has told us what he was told as the person on the ground, coming from the officer commanding. It's either you did not command that, or we then deal with the person who was in the office.
That's exactly what I mean, Mr. Chair.
I'm not understanding what you mean.
I'm saying it could have been the office by virtue of another individual other than myself who could have communicated with this officer in charge.
Officer in charge, who gave you that communication?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Personally, I cannot remember exactly who told me, because we were not directly involved in the deployment at the Chidhakwa diamond fields. But it was only for the purpose of our own information to know the goings on at the Chidhakwa diamond fields. But we were not directly involved in the deployment.
Supplemental champion.
Okay, you come with the supplemental. Let me say this to the highest police officers in the country who are here. You can see that what he said at the beginning is not what he said as a result of what his superior said. And now he wants to find out where he can come in. He's going under oath. And you are a disciplined force. You have credibility. You are the law enforcement agents of this country. And your statements are marred with the inconsistencies before we go anywhere. And may I demand of you to play the role that you saw for this country when you took oath, that you would serve this country honestly. I ask of you, we are not playing games here. An officer, be free to say what you have to say. You are protected by this Parliament in terms of the Privileges and Immunities Act. We cannot waste too much time on this one saying this one saying this when we're making so much progress. We're trying to follow the rank and file officer in charge, officer commanding, provincial officer commanding, and then the Commissioner General to respond to this. So now we don't know what it is. Now you're telling us you don't know about this, and then the next thing you said, you got communication that the troops will be deployed to the ground, Maranga resources, to take over from the officer commanding. I'm then asking, which officer commanding? And now you are giving us a different statement. I don't want to read this book to tell you the rules in here. Parliament has a lot of powers which people have never understood. And I think it's important when we come here, we also abide by the rules that Parliament expects you to. Honorable Chairman, we wanted to come in. May you respond, please?
I cannot remember exactly who informed me of those deployments. But it was.
But sir, with due respect, you are a police officer. So are you telling me that I can just pick up the phone? Are you telling me that the system is so dysfunctional that anybody can pick up the phone and give an instruction to deploy police officers? Is that how it works?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was not about us deploying the police officers at Chidhakwa. The police officers had already been there and had already been deployed. So it was just a matter of informing me as the officer in charge that there are teams on deployment at Chidhakwa fields.
So who informed you is the question.
I'm sorry on that one. I cannot really remember who told me those who told me the information.
This instruction that you got, was it an SMS, your phone number, was it a telephone call, was it on radio? And then when you take an instruction or you get information, was it an informer or you get information from somebody else?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was informed over the telephone, but maybe, as I said earlier on, it was just for my own information. I had nothing to do directly with the deployment that we were already on the ground.
But you had said it was the officer commanding who told you, but now you're saying you don't. Who informed you for your own information? It was the officer commanding.
Chair, I think from what he said, he knows what he's supposed to say, but probably maybe he's too junior, or probably he's too afraid to say what he wants to say, because, for example, the acting commissioner is here, he's looking at him, and tomorrow he might find himself maybe redeployed to a certain raw area there. acting Commissioner General is here. He is the boss. So he must be able to be answerable to all these issues. Because if he is the acting Commissioner General, because like what you rightly say, he was responsible for operations. So definitely he was aware of those troops, of those, police officers who were deployed in Chiazo. So he must be able to answer to say from A up to B, this is what happened. From B up to C, this is what happened. Because he is the boss. Instead of us, maybe, Honorable Chair, try to run around and try to let him just answer straight.
Certainly by that this is wise, and let me go back to the Constitution, Commissioner General, in terms of section 221 of the Constitution, the role of the Commissioner General. Number one, the police service is under the command of the Commissioner General of the police, appointed by the President after consultation with the minister responsible for the police. Under your command, can you tell us, you being the person who's commander under, why police were deployed in Marange to take over the diamond activities?
Thank you, Chair. I wish to state that I will answer any question on condition you are specific. But anything that is not specific, please don't expect me to provide you with answers. For as long as you give me specific questions, dates, details, and so on and so forth, I will give you clear answers if I happen to know. And remember, the person you are talking about, is the Commissioner General, who then was Dr. Shuguri, and he happens not to be here. So, impliedly, you may want to ask me questions that should have been asked to the then Commissioner General, who is not here. Even Ramatanga, the Commissioner General right now, may not be able to answer some of the questions, especially when they are not as specific as they should be. So if you happen to give us specific questions, please, we will inform you. But anything that sounds like speculation, don't expect us to answer anything.
Commissioner General, I'll ask other members to I think you seem to be taking this committee for a ride. It is you who should be giving us the specifics on when you deployed the police as DCG operations. What is the role of the DCG operations in the police? Can you explain to us your role as DCG operations, that outside of the Commissioner General and the Commissioner, Deputy Commissioner Crime? Now I'm being specific to your role as DCG operations for the Zimbabwe Republic Police. What is your role? And can you answer to when troops were deployed to Chiazo? And be specific.
Thank you very much, Chair. I may be DCG operations, but I may provide you with information that there are times when I may not.
What is your role as DCG operations when you were given this position? You were given your role that you play for the avoidance of doubt, so that you are specific. What role do you play as operations? What role do you play as operations, so that we know that this is what you do?
I'm DCG operations and I'm based at Police General Headquarters. Police General Headquarters deals with policy issues. And then the substantive operations are done at tactical level, district level, and provincial levels.
So your role in terms of operations, what does it cover?
We formulate policies that have something to do with the police operations.
When you talk about operations of police, tell us, where we don't know.
These are the day-to-day.
No, hold on, sir. We are so blind, we don't know how the police operates, and we want to be specific. When you talk about police operations, elaborate for us.
We are talking about the daily maintenance of law and order as pertaining to the stations, to the districts, and to the provinces, the deployments on traffic duties, management of elections, and so on and so forth.
So you are admitting that the deployment of the police falls under you in terms of operations?
In most instances, but not in this particular one.
Why is this operation different from others? Why is this particular operation different from others?
I'm sure it was indicated to you why the security services were deployed there and why individual companies were invited to partner security services and so on and so forth. The diamond industry is an intricate industry, and when you are dealing with certain things, you don't involve many people. You involve only a few for security reasons. And I happen, together with my colleagues, not to have been chosen to preside over some of these things.
But so who was then chosen to do this? Who was the favored son amongst the police to engage in this operation? Maybe you can now tell us, because there's no operation that should ever happen, because in an operation happening in the police without your know-how says a lot.
I indicated to you that the summons you sent to me asked me to talk about Jinyame, and I indicated to you that myself, the Commissioner General today, and my 3 colleagues here know absolutely nothing about that entity.
Thank you, and I apologize for taking you back to the period where Commissioner Mahatibiri has professed a lot of knowledge, which is the period of deployment around 2005 to 2000. I don't know when there were 35,000 people in Chidhakwa, and in his own words, he said it was a very successful operation. But the reports from civic groups indicate that that period was characterized by a lot of human rights violations, killing of innocent Zimbabweans from that community, mainly of ordinary Zimbabweans. So I wanted him now to be specific when he indicated that they successfully executed that operation. How many of our Zimbabweans did his operation kill, and how many did they maim? There was a report which was not very happy about the conduct of police. So I'm sure Mr. Matibiri will be the very best person to report to this committee on that operation.
Those questions I can certainly answer, and I'm ready to answer on those ones. What happened during those times was that we wanted to sell our diamonds. And before you sell diamonds, you have got to get a certificate from the KPC. And we had our traditional enemies during those days who wanted to ensure that Zimbabwe was not in a position to sell diamonds. And they went to a stage of stage managing most of those reports. And to us, they mean nothing because they are stage managed. If there is any genuine report about those issues, we can interrogate it.
Can you name the traditional enemies that you're referring to?
I hope the becomes
If you could just tell us. Sorry, I think just before you respond, I think Dr. Chombo needs to excuse any questions, honorables, that you might have for him so that he attends the limited engagement. Do we really need him? I think we have enough. Yeah, I think even Honorable Sekeramayi, does anybody really require them here? Mr. Chidhakwa, you think you have to be here? You have to be here. I think Honorable Sekeramayi and Dr. Chombo, we want to thank you for being patient, for bringing us to what the committee has done business with you. If we do, we'll let you know. Okay, yes.
Just on clarity on Honorable Chombo and Honorable Chidhakwa as well. This issue, the police, they have confirmed, especially from Honorable Chombo, that he was not aware of the operations of the said troops which were sent here to the Maranga. Confirmed that. Then, on Honorable Chidhakwa, as well on the same issue, you said, if my memory serves me well, that they requested, as the Minister of Mines, for the police to come to charge. If he can just clarify to us on which person did he ask from the Minister himself, or it was from the Commissioner General of Police in terms of instructions for the police to go to charge?
I think I hear you where you're coming from, but I think Dr. Chombo was very clear. Even if he was given that instruction or he was told that message by the Minister of Mines, it would then be the responsibility of the Commissioner General to then deploy. And I think you were right in saying, why are we beating about the bush? The Commissioner General is here. From a constitutional point of view, we'll be with him until tomorrow, until all these answers are out. We're as patient as anybody. Answers will come out.
Thank you, Chair. It's okay.
And I think the other players will come in, DTZ, where the police being deployed. So I think we have no business with you, Dr. Chombo and Honorable Sekeramayi. Thank you very much for attending. Let me also take this opportunity to also mention that Comrade Bonyongwe had also an assignment, so he was accused. He's here now. And then we also had Comrade Mutasa, because of health reasons. We didn't see any need for him to be on, got the information that we wanted. So he's left. So I thank you. I think Commissioner we would like you to move forward with your other, if you can take the Francis. You can read, sir. I think come forward with whoever you might want to assist you, because I think we must understand this. Before we started this session, you said you were representing the Commissioner General. Because if you had not said that, I could have said no, and you said it in front of everyone, that you are representing the Commissioner General. But when the questions come hard, you want to, I think there must be some credibility. Because everybody heard you, unless I'm actually lying. You said I'm here representing the Commissioner General. But when the questions are tough, you then don't represent the Commissioner General.
Maybe no tough person for me.
So, but can you also help us check if the Commissioner General is done with helping His Excellency? Because it will also help if he's done if we find his way here.
He doesn't answer phones with his status.
Okay, yeah,
we can comfortably hear each other from this point.
I think
we can hear you.
I think we've kindly asked for you to come forward. And I think we have asked of everyone to do that. Even the former ministers have also complied. So we're just asking you to come forward.
Is it about the distance or it's about hearing? We can hear and we are comfortable here. Ask your question.
I'm kindly asking you to come forward. Commissioner General Chombo, in charge of crime. Can you also? We also want a gender balance. We don't want to be accused I think the Deputy Commissioner, you are a man that is well respected. And I think when you appear before us, it's equally important to also work together so that we come to an end to this. I think everybody has been patient. Everybody has been asking. We expect uniformed forces to really lead by example in terms of discipline. And I think our questions are very clear. We had said that you were also standing in for the Commissioner General. Has that changed? No. It hasn't changed. I'm just checking because there will be a lot of questions that will be asked pertaining to the role of the Commissioner General, and I hope you are able to answer them in a professional manner. The aspect of the operations, there's an aspect of crime which Honorable Sarwaka was talking about. And we have people from Marange Trust who have a report of a lot that happens during the time in terms of law and order. So may you respond to Honorable Sarwaka's question which you were responding to?
I had indicated that during that particular period, what we gathered as security services is that the reports generated particularly by the civil society were stage managed. They were not genuine, and from that point we are rather dismissive of those reports. If there is any iota of evidence that the security services did anything, I am there to respond to those questions. But as I speak now, I happen not to know. What I happen to know was that there was lawlessness because of the numbers of illegal panels there, and some of them were violent to each other, and we had to intervene to stop that violence that was being perpetrated by others. There were some panels who would find Zimago from Biro. They would just get to know that at this pit or that concession there is rich diamonds coming out, and they would go and pounce on anyone who is already there. If anything, those are the ones we were dealing with, because we wanted to ensure that at the very end our diamonds will never be labeled bloody diamonds. So we were very cautious as a government that if our diamonds are labeled bloody diamonds, then we will not be able to sell them. And we had difficulties making similar arguments with the team from the KPC. They only gave us certification because we satisfied that there was nothing bloody, especially as instigated by the security services. That for sure I can testify, and I know it happened. There wasn't the level of violence that we got to hear from the newspapers and other forms of the media. I totally dispute, and if there is any evidence that anything of that sort ever happened, I will answer to that. But we were given clear instructions as to how we were going to conduct ourselves, and we stuck to that. And the objectives were only 3, and we dealt with each and every one of them successfully. And this is why I am saying, as security services, we were very happy at that particular stage. And once we dealt with the lawlessness that took place during that time, we gave the opportunity to the parent ministry, which is the Ministry of Mines, to do what it is supposed to do. And since that time, our diamonds were being sold, and naturally we're happy about that.
Hello, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
To Commissioner Matibiri, I'm not sure whether he knows the man called Inspector Chani, who was then convicted and given an 18-year sentence for abuse and murder of.
He is Superintendent Chani.
Yeah, he can correct me on the titles. I don't, but at least he knows what is the case about Superintendent Chani, and also the operation Akuzokwi. That operation, codenamed Akuzokwi, what did it achieve?
I think the question is very clear. that you have mentioned that you did your work professionally. At the same time, the top cop superintendent was convicted by the courts of this country for 18 years, which is now evidence of that there was brutality.
You can only
Can I finish? So I think this is where it's coming from, the fact that there's evidence before the court that someone was convicted, a police officer, Superintendent Chani, that you said, in terms of the brutality and what went on. How do you reconcile that with your statement that the police were professional and they never did anything wrong when a man has been convicted for 18 years?
What I am saying, Chair, is that someone can only get convicted if he or she is brought before the courts by the police. And by acquitting ourselves professionally, I mean anyone who went outside the instructions we dealt with and dealt with severely. And he is a very good example that we dealt with any abuse of office during our deployment. And he is the only one we arrested. And what happened, there are intricate cases of him rather getting too emotional in a situation where he should not have been, resulting in what happened. But all the same, as police, we felt he went out of bounds and we arrested him. And this is how he was convicted. And therefore, when we arrest those who offend the law, I'm sure we should be applauded for doing our job.
So there's a saying that says, so who police the police? You have a situation where a certain behavior is expected of law enforcement agents. Part of it is the ability to control themselves, the ability not to be emotional. People have been hurt for life. And this is no stranger. This is somebody who is trained, who goes through every aspect to ensure that they don't injure or kill or work outside the law. If there's anything, they enforce the law. What does that say about the police force that was deployed in terms of the actions that we've done? Because it only takes one bad apple to make the whole basket rot. It does not have to be many, but it's something that I think you said that there are people who don't like us. NGOs were saying all sorts of things, but this is not an NGO story. You never in your presentation to us say, but despite us doing what we did, there were also certain things which did not work according to plan. For example, one police officer was arrested for doing things out of order. You seem to have missed that out, and that's why it's coming in. So that's why when we give you a chance to speak, give us the good and the bad too. Because on our aspect of oversight, we look at everything. So if that question had not been asked by Honorable Sarwaka, you would have given us a picture that the police are upright. They don't make mistakes. And what they did is right. So I just wanted you to understand that bit. Let's go back, Commissioner General.
Chairman.
Yes,
Sorry, Chairman. I think it must be noted as well with regard to Mr. Chani. That Mr. Chani by then he was an inspector. And he was a superintendent. Chief superintendent. He was a chief superintendent. And a chief superintendent, that's not an ordinary portfolio. He was someone who was taking charge of people, giving them instructions of what to do. I'm one of those people who come from Anigaland. And he actually had a whole team of officers that will get diamonds on his behalf. And it's on record. It's on record. And the fact that they went on to murder a person because of this diamonds thing, it's only that it only came to him simply because he was the one in charge. But it was a whole lot of police officers. We are talking of a chief superintendent
And people will take it to such a scenario that it was an isolated case, it said. But anyway, let me go back to the final details of what we are, then whilst we move on, Mr. Chairman. Tiripanya mapurisa. Akaoneka mumunda kwa Chiadzwa. Vakavarisa makambani. Anga aripo. Vakatora mavaults case anga ari madiamonds. Ndopatatiri. Kuti mapurisa awo achienda kwa Chiadzwa. Achinotora makeni emadiamonds. Makeni emadiamonds nanhasi asuzikana kuti akaendepi. Mapurisa awo akabva kupi? Akatumwa nani? Anga ari mapurisa emuZimbabwe kana vanga vatorwa kumwe kunze kwenyika. Nekuti officer in charge wemaranga haazivi, propo weManicaland haazivi. Vamati Bhire ndo vakuru vaiona ngezvemaoperations vari kuti vanoita zvepolisi, asi mukuru anga aigari Pfunde. Saka ivo vari kuti zvaitsvakiwawo maspecial children vaipiwa task iyo. Saka ngavachijekesera kuti wakaendesa mapurisa marori ava ese kubva Harare unono kusvika kwaChiadzwa vakusipana, so almost 300 kilometers. Vakasvika vakavharisa mugodhi vakatora madiamonds pasina kana one unoziya. Zvotopera nyika yatofambira mberi. Vamati Bhire vasuziya, atete Shambare vari panapa havazivi, vese vauya panapa Wamatanga vana Mnangagwa kuofisi kwavo vari kuita briefing kubvira mangwanani havazivi, veshe havazivi. Tototi nyika iri kutoenda mapurisa ari panapa akakura kudai chiro chaiitika vasikazivi munyika yemuZimbabwe. Mune mapurisa akafunda ane madigiri asikazivi.
Chair, I think you mentioned the issue of Chief Superintendent Chani, and I've been able to answer because I know it happened. And I know we arrested him and brought him before the courts. And certainly I would say it is one of the few nasty incidents that happened there. These are the issues that are being raised. I don't know anything about them, and I cannot be talking about things that I don't know.